welcome in Organized Real Estate, Clint Skutchan with T360, a full group of folks to talk with today, talking with the folks from MLS Aligned, and just given our prep conversations here, this could be a lively one coming in hot. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one. Lots to get through today. If you do have questions, and there's going to be a lot that we'll be covering pretty quickly, if you do have questions, go ahead and throw those up in the chat section or the Q&A section. We'll try and address those as we can. Really happy to have you all though joining us. And I think this is a very timely conversation where we'll certainly talk about the showing aspects, as this group just purchased kind of the bones to create their own showing service. But I think, you know, the larger connotation here speaks to what's going on, and some movement I think we've seen in organized real estate over the last couple of months around the idea of greater equity or direct ownership of technology. So we're going to get into that quite a bit today. So we could basically finish out the hour just by having you introduce yourself. So maybe we'll skip over that. But I do want to start with some lighter kind of, and I want to get to know you all, because this is as I think most who are aware of the industry, this is an interesting group. So I'm curious as to if you had to select one representative from your group to do the following items, you tell me who it would be. So from a strategic standpoint, like who's the strategy guy? Like who would you put forward as your strategy guy?
I would put Matt. Anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, I would say Matt and Brad.
Yeah, I'm with Kurt. It's Matt and Brad.
Yeah.
What about the technical aspect? Like who's the technical person?
Dave and Brad.
Yeah, Dave and Brad.
Dave and Kurt.
I think from this point forward, we have to include Brad in every answer.
Yeah.
He's the utility player, clearly. What about when he comes up against something that's political or policy related? Who are we putting up to bat?
Chris.
Yeah, Chris.
That one I kind of assumed, given his proclivity to head PAGs and all the different committees. What about operational and actual implementation? Is this where you guys just sub out and go to others on your staff, or who's the operations guy?
I think that's the minefield that we've I think identified.
Right.
We all have the desire to go in and answer every question, to be the hammer on every nail that comes up, and we realize that each of us has a day job, and to hand it off to others who I think are better suited for that. And I think we've done a good job of that so far.
I'll add to that, Chris, that one of the things, Clint, about MLS Aligned, it started and continues to be, so don't think we've abandoned it, but it started as a conversation of executive leadership, CEO, and technical leadership, CTO, CIO. Because we felt that when we originally started these conversations so many years ago, we felt there might be a little bit of a break between technology and policy sometimes. And our technical leaders were all telling us we may miss the mark just a little bit as CEOs when we went and grabbed a microphone somewhere. And so there's not only the 5 of us looking for the nails, there's another 5 people behind us, great men and women, all looking for that nail to fix. And we sometimes can step on each other. And that's
all super talented people that are behind us too. We have an awesome team.
Yeah.
And a big team. It's a big group, and when we started out, it was really just collaboration and partnership. And when you're in that mode, it's easier to work that way. And then all of a sudden you grow up overnight and you have a couple products, and you can't work in that same manner as you worked before.
No, but Brad, I'll bring us back to when we started this concept of the showing solution. We had the ability overnight to leverage 30 to 50 resources on our due diligence and our fact gathering and our opinion gathering. And when they ran into roadblocks, they'd get 4 or 5 more folks from different teams to join in. And it was very, very collaborative. So we have that ability, but our execution, we need to continuing to polish what our execution looks like in that.
Yeah.
Because it jump forward just a little bit, but maybe back out of you, because we're already going into the deep dive on MLS Line. But for those who aren't familiar, maybe jump in and kind of give me an overview of the history. You talked about how it came together, but for those who are just getting introduced to MLS Aligned, who are you? How did it come together? All those fun things.
I will spin you a tale. It was Matt Consalvo who some years ago put an inclusive invitation to come to Arizona and for those MLSs and associations that have had experience with their own development, procuring some of their own public records, for example, and building solutions that help deliver information to their customers. And I think Matt, this was Matt's vision to come together and to say, a lot of us are reinventing the wheel. How do we come together and build on our collective strengths so that we can move the industry forward? And every so often, because Matt is so humble about that, he is not the one to wave the flag to say, no, I thought of this at 3:47 a.m. This was Matt's vision. And I always have to remind him, because he is so humble, to come together. But I think that that meeting was a productive first one. And Matt and Brad and Kurt and all of us were there. And Dave was there. How many MLSs first came together, Matt, at your location in Arizona?
We invited 20 and 14 showed up. And the requirement was it was CEO and technology leader both. And we had 14 show up, and it was July.
Yeah.
And it was a commitment. And from that 14, about 6 or 7 continued the conversation that finalized on these 5 with a commitment to share best practices and share what we've made mistakes on or what we've learned over the years. If we built nothing together, that was okay. If we at least learned how to communicate and get our technical folks talking, that was the first step.
How did you formalize this? Because that happens a lot where groups come together. We facilitate some of our own, with different folks, and I know of a bunch of others that do this, and they get together and they kind of talk, but rarely does it get formalized and then, as you were pointing out, get put into action. So how did it swing from just hanging out and brainstorming to becoming a formalized structure, and how important it was that there was a structure to it?
Well, I
Kick
think
that over to the attorney in the room, Brad.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brad, go.
Well, I think that evolved from the meeting too. So as our organizations that are present on this phone call right now, as we started our technical people getting together more, right, and they have weekly calls, and CTOs are on the phone, and we started to figure out where are the inefficiencies, where's Utah building something, where's Dave building something, can we overlap, can we help each other, can we share, should we reduce inefficiencies where we can. We had a bunch of things happen. Matt and Chris's group, they did a public records thing, and Kurt and I did a mobile app thing. And but then as we started talking, we thought, really, if we could bring our databases and make them more accessible and hang an API off of them, that would help the broker and vendor community long term. All of our people got jazzed about it, and Chris's group kind of did the proof of concept, and Kurt's group was advising on that, and Dave's group was advising on that, and Matt's group was helping on that, and we had programmers involved, and we said, you know what, we have something brewing here. We have something really that's more than just, hey, this is a fun collaboration. Let's talk about things. Let's participate in projects. And we realized we had something special, and so at that point we said, you know what, we better organize this thing. And get it properly legal. And so we put together an LLC, and that really was the impetus for all of it. And once we got to that formal structure, we didn't stop the collaboration piece that Matt talked about. It's been going on, and it continues to go on, but we formalized up a little bit.
So when you're in this collaborative environment, and you've got personalities, maybe, or not, I don't know. When it comes, because we hear a lot about this, oh, well, the Association of MLS folks can't get their stuff together because they try to collaborate, but ultimately when it comes to decision or doing something that matters, they can't agree, and then it disintegrates. How do you guys push past that? I mean, again, they're joking aside, there literally are big personalities in this room, and then you got your technical folks. When you bump up against something where maybe it's not as collaborative and streamlined as it would be elsewise, what gets you through that? And Dave, I might go to you as the voice of reason on this one to start. What have you noticed that works when there's large personalities and smart people in a room that occasionally are going to disagree?
At the end of the day, we all have similar problems to solve, and we're doing things in very similar ways. And so I think we put those egos aside and say, I need something for my MLS, and why would I want to have that ego get in the way of doing that? Because at the end of the day, we need to deliver. So I haven't seen it even kind of pop up. I don't know, guys, have you seen any of?
Yeah, Kurt, I'd be curious about your take on that one.
Did you say Kurt?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to talk anyway, so I'll step out of the way if you want Kurt to answer it. Well, I'm actually pretty passionate about this answer, and I've given it a lot of thought. One of the things that I've been in groups before, and I know what it's like to try and collaborate, and I know what it's like to both hit the mark and miss the mark. But the secret pixie dust here is that we have a handful of organizations that at the core base of the agreement is trust. Like, I want each one of these guys to succeed just as badly as I want myself to succeed. And honestly, that's unique. That's rare. And when you find that, it makes it not only you've got that level of trust, it makes it a lot easier to not be selfish in some of these decisions, because you have to be able to collaborate and you have to be able to do it in a way in which we're going to succeed as a group. And I can step back, and I've watched Brad step back. I've watched Matt and Chris and Dave all do it where, look, okay, fine, that might be my, one glowing item that I want, but I'm going to take a back seat on this one and let you guys succeed for a while, and then I'll be back. And I think that's rare, and it's special.
And I like to add to this that I recently was having a conversation with another MLS about this, and the way I said it is, look, I learned a long time ago, and if you know me, you probably have heard this a dozen times, but I really approach any kind of situation this way. I learned it in the Army. In order to lead, you must know how to follow. If you can't follow, then you can't lead effectively. I made the comment that I now understand what it's like to be Ringo in the Beatles, being part of MLS Aligned. I'm definitely Ringo some days, right? But what's so great about this, Kurt says the foundation is trust. We could start moving things based on a conversation and make the comment, okay, well, we'll codify this with a document next week, but let's get moving on this right now. Just recently, we all came together in Vegas, and we were passionately discussing one particular item. And it was literally 4 of these guys thought one thing and I thought differently. And I felt completely comfortable saying, guys, what about this? I've never once felt like I could say something because there was a difference of opinion and that I wouldn't be taken seriously. And I think that's unique. We're all really strong. We have strong opinions and we all have our own strong approaches to leading our organizations, but this is a group that gives and take. And if there's ever a testament to that, Dave Wetzel, who is relatively newer coming into his position compared to all of us who've been around a while, we had a conversation about this. We're so lucky to have Dave and his new set of eyes. So even somebody who's coming into the CEO position, we're so excited to have Dave to come in, who's got a different point of view. And all of us sometimes will take a back seat and say, Dave, tell us what you think, because you probably have a better idea or better view of this than us. And I think that's I think that's telling of this group.
I took over as the CEO roughly a year ago. Each of these other guys called me one-on-one and said, Dave, we want to make sure you're successful in that CEO role. How can we help? Oh. And it's not just helping me as a new CEO, but it's also that's how we roll on all of the projects and everything that we do together.
Matthew, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, I was going to add one other thing to the conversation. That is, we're also fortunate that we all have uniquely different skills, and we came to these roles from uniquely different paths. None of us took the same path to get here. And as a result, we have perspectives and differences that make the recipe so much more robust because we are all so different. We'll bump into each other sometimes. We will. And that's okay. We figure it out. And our team.
You did not be concerned, I think. Like, honestly, when you're doing things that matter and you don't disagree, that would be almost as concerning as disagreeing. Let me move us forward because I think. Oh, go ahead, Brett, and then I'll move us forward.
Because we all have differences in how we lead and how we lead our organizations and our organization styles. And it's interesting because for me, it's fascinating because we get in a room and we approach a topic and I want to approach it one way and Kurt's going to approach it another way and Dave's going to approach it another way. And you listen sometimes and you learn from people because our styles are different, but you grow as a leader, and it's really fascinating to watch because Kurt will make me laugh on something and maybe I'll be real passionate about it, but I'll just smiling and breaking away. And I'm like, you know what, when we focus on the future, it is so magical because we all are exactly where we need to be. And then you bring the strengths of the different leadership and the strengths of our technical teams behind us who also have the same thing. They lead differently and they lead their technology different. It's pretty magical. So I would say that for me, you get into grooves and how you do things, and then you see others do it really well, and you learn from them, and then you start implementing things that they do in their styles. And I think that, and Dave mentioned it, like, we're here to support each other too, as much as MLS Aligned is about a technical development and software. It's also about being better leaders in this industry and identifying things that we can fix and make better. And I think the five of us do that so well together.
Let's test out your different views. So there's clearly a lot going on in the technology and vendor landscape right now. One of those things, obviously, through the showing service drove this conversation, and we'll get into that deep dive on the decision to go out and buy some technologies. But what are your different perspectives? Like, what are you seeing, and how are you viewing the shift in this technology and vendor landscape right now? And maybe I'll start with Chris. Let's go with you first.
I will heavily borrow a hashtag that encompasses almost my entire view on what we've been doing. And that's, I will borrow this from Greg Robertson with the hashtag MLS owned. I think many MLSs right now, they see what's happening within the industry. There's a lot of money in the industry, and there's a lot of interest of purchasing this company, or this company. For MLSs, traditionally, many MLSs have put a lot of eggs in their vendor basket. And when you have a difference of ownership that impacts that, there are some MLSs who are going to have a conflict of interest policy to say, look, if we deliver services to our market, and that service is owned by one of our participants, that's inherently a conflict of interest. We have to do something about that. That ties directly into what we've done in this example, but as a general rule, it's not to say that vendors aren't going to have an important part of what is happening within at least the Wisconsin market, because we're a Flex MLS account. We're very happy. We're not going anywhere. But we also know that we have to have our own personal stake in how we deliver services to our own market going forward. And so the timing worked out very well with MLS Aligned, that we're able to leverage those relationships to help control that aspect of it.
What's your read? And I guess by extension, we're asking kind of what your leadership, read is on all this movement in the tech space.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting angle to take when it comes to the world that we live in right now, because Chris is right. There was, especially most recently, there have been some relatively large shakeups when it comes to purchases, when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. And I think it's an interesting time for companies, especially MLSs. Like, you think about what an MLS is, it's basically the act of collaboration. Like, it's the act of cooperation amongst competitors. And it's an interesting time for MLSs themselves to take a step back and say, what is it that we can do? For years, this industry has focused on consolidation. Like, everybody's got to consolidate just as rapidly as possible and start fixing some of these problems. But there's a uniqueness that comes from collaboration instead of consolidation. And I think that we're in a unique time where MLSs can take a step back and say, yes, okay, we have a core business model. We have a reason for existing. And we have a unique place to fill in the world. And there might be opportunities that arise that we alone can address, or at least be able to address in a different way than others can.
Dave, can I ask you, and I think the perspective that I find interesting of yours in this group is that these gentlemen operate in large regional marketplaces where they don't bump up against a lot of other, competing MLSs. And so the vendor landscape there is a little different than when you are in more of a market like yours, where there are a number of folks. And then there's different vendors that get attached to each, and how each of those vendors are used, as a competitive, incentive, or as a different kind of perspective on the differentiation between the MLSs. What's been your take, and again, your leadership's take on all this shift, and especially knowing you have a little bit different parameters?
Well, yeah, in Northern California, we do have a lot of MLSs here that are working closely together. We do look to make sure that there is interoperability with the data, as we are all in a data share here in Northern California. But I think we take a different look at all this as well, because we're in the heart of Silicon Valley. And I've been in this industry for about 6 years, going on 7. And before that, I was in high tech here in Silicon Valley. You know, the whole idea of getting capital, starting your company, trying to get acquired is just second nature here. And so I think what we take a look at it and we say, well, it's going to happen. And what we do is we step back and we look at what is core to our business or core to our customers' business, and how do we make sure that the things that I'm using are as part of our service, are things that I can have some level of control or some level of ability to know that that's not going to disappear or fall into somebody else's hands. But that's just kind of second nature here in Silicon Valley because of the world that we live in here.
Brad, for you, I mean, you sit in a number of industry roles, so you've kind of got that view of, all this, what's happening with the consolidation, vendor movement, all those things from your organizational standpoint. But then you're also really looking at a national landscape too. So curious as to your thoughts on how you're viewing all this.
Well, one of the things that we all talked about is there's always these national initiatives or national announcements where people will say, everybody should be doing this by this date, and then people don't follow through, and everyone should do this, or we should have these standards over here, and then it doesn't come to fruition. It's a big announcement. And so when we got in the room the first time, the first thing I said to Matt is, I don't want to make any announcements. I don't want any PR unless we have something to show, right? We are going to walk the walk. This group, behind the scenes, we're going to plan, we're going to talk, we're going to collaborate. But when we want to tell the world what we're doing, we will have it done. And we did that with our API. We just bought a showing software, right? I mean, we don't have one that we're announcing we're going to develop. We have one, and that's the biggest thing. Is I think we want to lead as leaders and show the industry that we may not have been able to purchase a company by ourselves, but with 5 of these other organizations together, working together, it's amazing what we can do, right? I mean, between all of us, we're $100+ million organization, right? We can go out and act like a big company and do what we need to do. That took time. That took all of the collaboration and the trust and getting to know each other and our boards of directors to get behind everything. And now we're there and we've arrived, and it's real. And I think that's the biggest thing is we'll make announcements, and we make announcements. We're gonna come right behind it, and we're gonna show our hands because our hands are already there.
Can I do a follow-up? You all, for those that aren't aware, I mean, you have a number of proprietary systems, so you're not necessarily as much in that vendor environment as some of the others on the call might be. So how has that shaped the conversations that you feel like you're having amongst your staff and your leadership, again, in relation to all this movement in the vendor space? Does it give you a different perspective? And do you have different conversations?
I'll jump in on that one, Clint. I think it gives us a different perspective because we know we can solve some of the problems that come at the MLS. We don't have every answer. We don't have every solution, and we are not here to tell anyone how to do it. But we've done enough. And if we don't know it in Arizona, we'll call San Jose because they've probably tackled it. And Chris and I are very, very great FBS customers, and we love our vendor in FBS. And Dave has a couple different front ends, and the other guys are independents in their own homegrown, which means at some point in time, somebody thought of this or fixed it. And we just sometimes have to figure out how to put that together. But we have confidence that we can. And that's maybe a difference between us and others.
Kurt, maybe same question to you, because again, you have more of that proprietary approach. So does that reshape it, or do you end up still hearing and seeing many of the same conversations that are replicated elsewhere?
Oh, I mean, look, those two answers are not mutually exclusive. We end up having the same conversations over and over and over again. But I think key is that earlier we were talking about the CTOs and CIOs that have joined us in this endeavor. And several times we used the word, or we referred to the depth of the organization. And I think in this case, what Matt is referring to is the width. We have a number of different skill sets, and we're all doing things a little bit differently. The fact that Brad and I make our own MLS systems is getting more and more unique these days in the real estate world, but it doesn't mean in any way, shape, or form that that we have some additional knowledge. Like Matt's doing things that we're not doing, Chris is doing things that we're not doing, Dave's doing things that we're not doing, and I think that's one of the things that's so exciting about that is the width of the organization and the different projects that we're working on. When you line them all up and you look at what individually each one of us is doing, it makes an awful lot more sense for us to start, sort of holding hands on some of these projects and trying to get some collaborative movement together. I think that's the exciting part.
So you guys have done a lot around API, and again, trying to kind of move the industry forward into that space where we're a little more contemporary, and that opens up more possibilities. It also starts to test the bounds of interoperability, and that's was a topic of discussion yesterday at Inman. We just put out an article yesterday through our Insights CEO briefing about that. CRMLS, MRED, Bright come up forward and speak to the showing and say, hey, we've got to get some standardization. We got to be API forward. All of those aspects. How do you all view this idea of interoperability? Again, when you're looking across multiple platforms, some proprietary, some vendor related, and getting into that AP environment, how do you all view that? And how do maybe we educate the organized real estate space on that? Because as I introduce that concept, it's surprising to me how few of folks really understand the importance and even what the general term means. So how have you all approached interoperability across all the different platforms that you're trying to bring together?
Well, I'm going to give you just a quick.
Maybe Brad, I can have you start with that one. Yeah,
I'll give you a quick example. So Kurt, we made an announcement last year that we were going to move everybody off of RETs onto APIs. We've already done that. It was all done earlier this year. Kurt's like, hey, I want to look at your API a little bit. We want to hang some stuff off of it. We want to use your API. Within what, Kurt? 60 to 90 days?
Yeah, I was thinking 60.
His technical team works with my technical team, and now they have their API, right? And I guess what I'm saying on that is interoperability is not that hard if you want to do it, right? And like I said, doing and talking are two different things. We do. And we have to get the industry to follow us, and we're doing that through our leadership, right? And so we've asked our vendors, we've pushed our vendors in our local market. We're going to push vendors from the MLS Aligned collaborative, larger perspective. Kurt will be working his market, and we'll all work in our individual markets. Which at the end of the day, if we move everybody onto APIs, you got 125,000 members now utilizing those systems, which then pushes the rest of the country, right? And forces, once the vendors get on it, the vendors want it. It's the problem is getting to the interoperability, right? Everybody's got to go out and do it and make sure that they're having their vendors do it. And if they do it, then they're going to want that everywhere else, which makes interoperability just become the common instead of yeah, we hear about it, we talk about it, we're going to hang an API off it, but we're not actually going to use it. And right. We see that all the time. We dealt with a vendor just yesterday where we're consuming data from someone now, and they just immediately give you a RETS credentials, right? And we say, we don't want RETS credentials, we want an API, right? We want to utilize your API. Oh, we have it, but no one uses it. We want that reversed, right? And once we get that reversed, then the whole thing will change.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a hump that you get over, with that it does progressively come easier and easier to bring things together in that API environment? Because we hear that said that, yeah, we should be there, and that's really going to reduce some of the barriers and the obstacles of, I think Chris just posted it, Betamax versus VHS. Can we just talk to each other, get to that common piece? And then beyond that, what are the standards language that we're going to use to do that? Are you finding that once you do get over that hump, it really does ease and increase that ability then to be more interoperable? And whoever wants to jump on that one, go ahead.
I'll jump on that briefly. If I look into my crystal ball, you mentioned the group that's coming together to create this internal API to move showing information around, probably to create a standard showing payload and how that data will move in and out of systems. And you mentioned Bright, CRMLS, and MRED. I applaud that. Everything that they do there is going to benefit us with our showing platform, because we know interoperability is going to exist across the country, even in some of the markets that we're serving right now, right? We are involved, all of our organizations, within RESO. And I know that conversation is coming up within RESO, but sometimes you can't necessarily wait for the standard. So while you're participating in that process, you're working with the industry as a whole. If it were just MLS Aligned talking about interoperability and planning for that, because we have clearly discussed that and the importance of this product, that on how it operates that way, it's strengthened by the fact that other organizations are doing it. So the fact that we're doing something and another MLS organization or organizations are doing something means there's momentum within the industry beyond what we're talking about in this conversation.
And I just want to say that is
the momentum. Yeah, go ahead.
That's that momentum. It's the talk. It's the, like I said, it's going to turn a corner, right? And it's just going to take leadership to turn the corner. And I think the more of our brother and sister organizations around the country that are pushing for standards, pushing for interoperability, pushing for API, like I said, once you hit a critical number, it all changes. And I think we're getting there, right? And I think with the right leadership, we get there. And showings is going to be a piece of that. The payloads are a piece of that. And I just, like I said, it's getting there, right? And it's just going to take that push. And I think we're seeing it. Like Chris said, the announcements of other organizations that are going to start pushing standards and APIs forward, even to the next level. We will adopt those, right? We will get to the point where we're going to utilize what other people have as well. And we hope people will utilize what we're putting out there.
So what I'm hearing yesterday a little bit, because it's funny because the momentum that you mentioned is right, because it wouldn't have been an Inman focus like it was yesterday, interoperability, especially among showing services, if all this momentum hadn't been building over the last few months. So technology wise, political pressure, all those things. And what I started to hear a little bit yesterday, I think from some of the vendors when we started talking about interoperability was, well, we can't just do that. And we have to be really cognizant about, protecting the data and not just letting things. And what I heard was a little bit of an underpinning of, well, we've gotten used to some markets that we like kind of the way they are. Now, if we can get beyond the technical limitations, now we've got some business limitations. So what's it going to take to push, beyond that? And again, the data always seems to be the reason. And MLSs, by the way, are just as guilty as, we're protecting the data. They're just as guilty as a whole. But what do we expect now? What's that next frontier of this interoperability conversation in terms of really getting folks to embrace this and get into far more of a competitive business environment than maybe they as vendors and you all as organized real estate leaders are used to? What will it take to get that to be more like what, Dave, you're used to in your hyper competitive technology environment where they work in universal kind of language? I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. And jump in, whoever.
I think a lot of it is that we're all motivated to make that happen, right? And we're going to do that with our product. As more MLSs are watching these conversations, and they may not be using our product, they may be using somebody else's product. They need to sit down with their vendors and force them into these conversations so that they're all part of this. So that's the way I see the momentum gaining is through the MLSs. Here you've got 5 of us who are already jumped in the pool. We just need more that are doing the same.
Go ahead, Matt.
Clint, you ask, what is it going to take? In a word, it's going to take courage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take conviction with that courage. We know what the problem is. Will we rise to the solution as an industry? Not individual MLSs, not 5 MLSs operating under this collective. As an industry, will we put a flag in the ground and saying, this is enough, and take the courage to stand?
Yeah, I was going to build on that with what Matt just so eloquently said. I think it takes courage, but the very next step after courage is a sense of ownership. Like, everybody has to realize this is not just, you don't just get to throw up your hands and say, golly, this industry sure has some problems. I hope someone comes along and fixes it. I think each one of us has an opportunity to sit down and say, what part of this can I own? Where can I make a difference? Like, is it a conversation with a vendor? Is it a decision in the boardroom? Like, where is it that my boots hit the ground?
There's a unique piece that I think MLS Aligned has that perhaps a traditional vendor doesn't have. Typically, the concern with showing information, and I'll refer to a comment that I made last week with this group, and I can't take ownership of it. I introduced my boys recently to the movie There Will Be Blood, right? About oil production in the early 20th century.
How old are your boys? They're beyond like 3 and 5, right?
They're 17.
They're not
Okay.
So I said, here's the great thing about showing information. It's crude oil. right now. And there is so much that I think this industry has yet to tap in to how they utilize the showing information crude oil. Think of what the anxiety was just this last year. Oh my goodness. My competitor now has access to intelligence that I consider to be mine or proprietary information to this broker in a way that may be used against me, or may be able to utilize lead generation in a way that perhaps is unfair to my brokerage. Who would that complaint go to? It would go to the MLS. We now sit on top of this information of this crude oil. How are we going to tap it? I have a feeling that this next generation of how we utilize showing information as an industry is all about how to better brokerage. And I think because of the folks controlling the tap, the MLS, how we utilize that, if we can protect some of the granular information and show more trends within the industry of what's happening. You can make trend lines and aggregates to this showings on this day or over this period of time shows perhaps in conjunction with the Fed rate and everything else. What does that mean long-term for a marketplace? We don't have to worry about a vendor doing that. And that's, I'll use another Army term. MLS Aligned is of the MLS and for the MLS. And there is no other group out there that can make the same claim. And that's what makes this such a powerful and well-positioned and well-timed movement.
Yeah, I think that piece is that utilization is really an important one. And obviously, I think you fellows have seen what, we did in conjunction with Bright, and that's heavily dependent on that showing that real-time ability to help brokers and even consumers better understand the marketplace. And I've been talking about movements as I go around the country and visit with different folks about their strategies. And I'm trying to get folks to think about how utilization actually may be the next stewardship opportunity for data for MLSs, because they have, as you talked about, Chris, a history of being respectful of the data and making sure that we're utilizing it in an appropriate way. And I think the stewardship piece goes from stewardship through protection to stewardship through appropriate, measured, and sensitive utilization of the data. And I think the MLS is the perfect platform to do that. But that's a real shift in mindset of, usually it was, let's not utilize it other than specifically for the, conducting of the transaction. Now the intelligence piece, the mining of it is hyper valuable, has potential to offset costs and limit, long-term our members having to pay for every incremental gain that we might have and finding other ways. But that's a real mind shift to say that appropriate utilization of the data may be stewardship moving forward. And so it's an interesting concept, and I think you're hitting on something there, Chris, and why this is so valuable. And whether it's the players that are involved or the timing of the importance of showing solutions, why we've seen, I think, more momentum around the idea of the showing services than anything else. So maybe a good time to transition. So all this is happening. There are folks that are scrambling, looking at different options. There's political pressures, and you all as a group say, well, let's go and look at the idea of owning. What went into that? Because that's not what has to be in place because there are lots of other groups that I hear are talking about what you've done is come together, collaborating, looking at the idea of purchasing collectively. What has to go in front of that, whether it's showings or other items, in order to be successful with this? And Matt, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, well, I want to point out to everyone is that's not how we started, which is the beautiful part of it. My team started looking at, I have a specific rule that says I cannot buy vendor services from a participant. So I'm stuck. So I have a team going out and looking at different things, and I call up Chris to talk to him about some other topic, and he says, oh, we're going out and looking at these things. And at the end of the day, I think collectively we vetted a dozen plus ideas, none of which were owning anything. We ran into some great vendors that we have great mad respect for. It just didn't fit perfectly. And we started talking, is this so hard that we couldn't do it together? And that's where the conversation went. And only after we put a flag in the ground and said, we exhausted all these vendor opportunities. We don't have a lot of faith that either they're great products or we're not just building up the next $500 million sale. And we decided to put a flag in the ground and do something ourselves. And only then did we come across some software that had been sitting dormant for a couple of years that we vetted collectively and said, this is what we could do together. So we didn't start out with a phone call saying, let's go do X. We started out going through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the other letters of the alphabet, and then we came to X.
And following up on that, we are already planning, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, right? We've been talking about lots of other opportunities and projects. We're not making those public, but showings, messaging, that was all part of discussions that have been going on for a year, right? And so,
or even longer than that, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, we know what our members and our participants and subscribers, what they want and what they need, and we always look at if we collectively can, or individually, if we can build something that provides a better experience or provides what they're actually asking for, we are going to look at it ourselves. And if we think it's too big of a project for ourselves, we're going to talk about it with the 5 of us, and we're going to talk to vendor partners. We're gonna explore, and I think that's really where we're going. Is it's not about an announcement that was made. It's about, for MLSs by MLSs, right? We want to have things that other MLSs around the country can look to us and say, hey, they're doing the exact same things we would do if we had this resource, or if we could partner with these 10 other MLSs, I think we could do this. We're trying to set that standard. We're doing it for ourselves and for our members, but we also know that there's a greater good here where we think we can deliver things, whether that's a service, a product, even consulting in some ways, right, to other MLSs to help them get from point A to point B.
Dave, did you have any additional clarification on what needs to be in place or what needs to be considered prior to, engaging in a purchase like this that goes beyond what's been shared already?
I think Matt said it when he described how we all came together years ago. We all have similar mindsets. We're all solving similar problems. We all have engineering teams, and we're doing things that are similar. This is just another one of those items where we were all saying, what do we need to do in this space of showings? And so we came together. We started off by just asking some questions. Hey, what are you guys doing? I have this analysis I'm doing. You've probably done a similar analysis. And all of a sudden that just kind of grew organically amongst us. And that's the beauty of MLS Aligned, is that we're all solving similar things and we just kind of gravitate together and do it.
So now you kind of came to a similar conclusion. Okay, maybe there's this opportunity going by. You largely have been a build entity because of your technical wherewithal. So now moving into this, okay, we're going to look at this. How did you get through the evaluation process and know that running through a purchase of this magnitude is being handled in the right manner? What steps did you take? What buy-in had to be created with, whether it be leadership or staff or amongst yourselves? What did that look like once you realized, okay, we're going to move forward? What do we need to do here?
I think it was a natural process for us because we took a step back and we looked at the software and we said, in order for us to do the due diligence on this, we need a person with this skill set, 2 people with that skill set, a person to look at this, a person to look at that. And each one of us said, I've got one of those. Oh, I've got 2 of those. I can do this. I can do that. And so we put a project manager in place, and she kind of drove all of these resources coming together from the 5 of us. And we just pounded through that due diligence with little engineering resources from all of us, which then made a very strong team in that due diligence area.
And Clint, you brought up leadership. I think all of us are fortunate that we have great boards of directors and great leadership structures, great governance structures, but also don't discount a couple things. One is we've been talking about working together for years. Secondly, with 5 of us all coming to the table to make a purchase, it minimizes the risk for each of us. And lastly, if I ever had advice for anyone who's got this crazy idea to go do something together with their neighbors, their friends, their industry colleagues, here's the best piece of advice I'd give them with respects to how you interact with your board of directors. Be careful on what you're going to ask for and always tell them the maximum it could be. Don't keep coming back. We all went to our leadership. We said, we have this idea. This is a price today, but we think we're going to spend this over the next X number of months or years. Do we have your approval to move this forward? And all 5 of us, our leadership, our boards of directors, all 5 of us said, we like this idea, go do it. Mm-hmm. And all 5 organizations were able to fund this collectively. But we also were realistic with our leadership and didn't try to have the conversation about how fast or how cheap we could do it, because these things are not fast and they're not cheap.
Brad or
the other
Chris,
piece that I
anything
would
to
add
add kind of on that? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I just would say what's important, because I saw a couple of comments in the chat area. What's unique about this, and I'm sure if you are an association or MLS executive, you will understand what I'm saying. Our local boards have such an important role. I think it is our responsibility to be transparent, to go back and have these conversations with the folks that sit on our board who have fiduciary for our company. But what's great about MLS Aligned is that the 5 individuals on this call are the voting board of managers. So ultimately, we're the ones who vote on decisions for MLS Aligned. I think that's a little bit of a different approach than perhaps some other organizations where you have so much hands-on volunteer leadership. That's an important role for your MLS, but with MLS Aligned, it is the MLSs and the executives making those decisions.
Right. Can I coax you into kind of a specific with that understanding that you all are kind of in that decision-making place for MLS Aligned, that move from build to buy, what especially because I know you're a diligence guy and your history and your background is not, you're not that just going to leap without having really thought through it thoroughly. So what was important about your evaluation, and what process did you need to have in order to feel comfortable about signing off on and voting for a purchase over build?
So it goes back to the history, right? Where we were going to build, and we were already having planning discussions about building. And then through happenstance and some relationships, we talked to some people and got back in touch with the product that we eventually, the product owners of the company we already decided we were going to purchase at that minute. And so we're at this point where build or buy. And the reality is that we looked at timelines. We said it wasn't that we eliminated building, because we could have passed on the purchase and put more resources into building as a collective body and had it done probably in the same period of time. We weighed cost benefit analysis. What does the product look like? How can we get it from point A to point B? Is it going to be easier to take it from point A to point B with an established source code rather than us putting that source code in ourselves? And so we weighed everything. We looked at it from a legal perspective as far as intellectual property and ownership and everything that comes along with it. We had a third party, we hired some third party companies to do reviews, but at the end of the day, like Dave said, we had 50 programmers amongst our staffs look at this. And when you can do that, and my perspective as an attorney looking at it, and all the other CEOs looking at it, I felt like the due diligence process was actually pretty easy. There's always hurdles in a transaction, right? And they're usually at the very end. They're regarding the parties that are involved or one term in a contract. But we structured a deal that we thought was very positive for both the seller and for the buyers, us. And I thought the due diligence process amongst 5 collective entities was fabulous. And you have to lead. So we had, like Dave said, we had a project manager leading all of the what I would call the technology due diligence, and then we had sort of the CEO project leaders that were leading the legal, the financial, and the negotiations. So it was wonderful.
Can I talk? And I think that's really important. And I think that understanding of knowing that you had a lot of expertise and you brought in, other where you maybe lack that expertise, you brought in others is really important, because for others, they may not have as much expertise. So then you may have to rely more on others who are. So that's an important thought. I do want to transition a little bit, because again, listening to some of the tone since this announcement, and in particular yesterday at Inman, there were some vendors, I think, that are positioning, well, we don't think MLSs should own. And when they do own, then, who holds them accountable for doing the things that we've been asking of our vendors and leading towards with interoperability? How do we ensure that they're going to maintain, options and differentiation for brokers when they directly own that? How would you respond to that? And I think that criticism could equally come from vendor partners as well as just subscribers, right? Like a nervousness about, okay, now they own it. They're the stakeholders. They've got a vested interest here. How do I know that I'm still going to be given choice moving forward?
I'll jump in on that, Clint. It goes right back to a comment Lori made in the chat, and that is we can never lose sight of the subscriber or member.
Right.
And here's the unique way that the MLS Aligned is positioned in this. The technology is just the technology. Whether you get that from yourself or some other party or some party somewhere else, the technology is the technology piece. All 5 of us each run local shops. We are not trying to be one MLS in 5 different points in the country or have others license this product and join this mega MLS collective. We each run MLSs that are hyper focused on the local. And what we're looking for is just how to create efficiency in the technology to meet the 5 individual needs of the organization.
Is a part of that efficiency being interoperable? And if others want to choose different services that might compete with one that you now own, you're open to that?
Absolutely. My brokers may want to hold on to a legacy product. My brokers may want to adopt a product that their brokerage built or some other collective entity that they're part of. My job is to respond to my brokers how they want me to. I'm just bringing forward a piece of technology that I think meets our local marketplace exceptionally well. But we will want to plug into others as we have that request from our brokers.
So walk me through this next. So what are, sorry, Kurt, what are your, maybe go ahead because I'm going to move us into a little bit of a different direction. So go ahead, Kurt.
I think that is the point that I would insert here is that, you know, I had to go ask for permission from my board of directors. My board of directors is made up of brokers and subscribers, agents, boots on the street, right? That is not the case. That's what I was saying earlier, where MLSs that are collaborating is a unique model because when I went to my board, I had to tell them, look, in order to accomplish great things, you have to have 2 things. 1, a really cool idea, and 2, not quite enough time to accomplish it. So I don't have a lot of time to explain to you what's going on. I just need you to trust and move forward. And it was brokers and agents that trusted me and MLS Aligned to move forward. Yeah, they knew there was risk. But we're deeply connected with with our subscribers and our brokerages, and to a certain extent, the franchises as well.
So tell me kind of intermediate term for your showing service. Like, what does that look like? How do you build on top of what you got? And then longer term, is this something that you will be offering outside of your organizations? And I don't know who wants to jump on that. So there's kind of 2 levels to that. One, what's the immediate kind of, how do you get this to be a viable product for you all? And then beyond that, is it something that's going to be, will you become essentially a vendor?
I'll take that one. So I think the MLSs on this call, I think we all have an interest in implementing the showing product because it suits our needs. We didn't do this to become a vendor. Let's not mistake that. We did this to control some of the technology in our markets. I think as a benefit of that, the only thing that we can offer at the end of the day, although every single one of us is a salesman in our own way, none of us are sales. We're not in sales. I will never try to sell this to another MLS, not in the traditional sense. All I can do if an MLS is interested is to come and say, Chris, Matt, Brad, Kurt, Dave, why did you do this? I can tell you from our perspective why this makes sense. MLS, if you're interested in this, have a conversation with us. I'll share with you our philosophy and I'll share with you what we see as the benefit. If you happen to share that, fantastic. Then going forward, once we have some proven products in the marketplace, let's talk about how the solution may work for your market. I think it's going to make sense for a lot of markets, but that's not why we're doing this. But that being said, and it's the first thing that I said, this is not an exclusive approach to the marketplace. This is something that we want to serve as a solution to our marketplace, but to the industry.
Dave, Brad, anyone else want to add on to, there's kind of a couple layers there in the immediate and the long term. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that.
The immediate is that all of us have different needs for showing software. Lots of our members, obviously raised concerns very quickly when there was acquisitions in the industry. And so we had already been planning anyways, which was great. So we were already 6 months to a year ahead of that. But that could happen with anything. It doesn't have to be with showings. It could be with statistics. It could be with public records. It could be any part of any piece of MLS software. So when you're just sort of hearkening on what Matt said, we're looking at the future. We're looking 5 years out, 10 years out all the time. What's best for our members? What do our members need? And we need to take care of them, whether that's through owning it, partnering with the right partners, or building the features that they want. And I think in the short term, the short term is we all have a need. And so we're going to roll this out and we want to prove it, right? I mean, again, like I said, it's you got to walk the walk. So we're going to prove it. We're going to roll it out to our members, our existing people here first. And then we will look for others. We know others are interested and we know others want to participate with us. And we know other people want to collaborate with us. And I think that is one of the most exciting things right now, is that we have a lot of interest. We have a lot of people who are passionate about bringing the best product to their members, and just like we do. And we want to work with all of those people. And we're figuring some of that out right now, but we're really engaged, I think. And I think all of the CEOs in this call will reinforce this. We're really engaged in finishing this product. It's already finished, but rolling it out in fourth quarter of 2021, not 2022, 2021. It will roll out in 2021.
So Kurt,
anything to add? Oh, go ahead, Matthew.
And understand that we're going to guinea pig on ourselves first.
Right.
We want to partner with others. We want to collaborate with others. We want other MLSs to call us up and join this idea of sharing things together. But we're not going to put any piece of technology out to anyone else until we have made sure that we've done it ourselves and it works. And that's where each of us individually need to make sure it works for our local market. And if we can get it to work for 3 or 4 or 5 of our local markets, then we think it can work for other markets too. So the technology functions. Now let's make sure it functions right to be right for us. MLS Aligned is not an exclusive club. There's no secret handshake and no private door. We are an.
I don't know. I've seen whatever you and Chris do with your handshakes. There might be a secret handshake or two.
We want the industry to grow and to thrive. And that may be doing initiative A over here, or doing something MLS Aligned's doing over here, or just thinking for yourself and dreaming up your own future and putting it as your reality. We want the industry to thrive. And this is how we're trying to do it for our 5.
Dave,
It's
go ahead.
very much a stepwise approach. I mean, we're eating our own dog food, and we found
exactly
that.
what I was going to say.
Yeah, we found that as we eat our own dog food, we found that, hey, there's a few little things that we need to make some changes to or additions to. As Brad said, we're going to have this thing out this year. We're going to have a few of us on it right away, and then the rest of us on it after that. And as we do that, I think as each of us come on board to this, we're going to say, oh, there's this little thing here we need to tweak or to do some improvements. And then by the time all 5 of us are on it, it's going to be a solid set of features here. In the future, we may add other things into this, but right now it's focused on getting the 5 of us on it for scheduling.
Yeah, that's a great segue, and we just got a couple minutes here. But because this is a world of always what's next, and even when we haven't gotten done what's here, there was a lot of convergence, or I think, around this that would allow for the support of volunteers, your technical folks, all those things. But would you envision, or do you see some other low hanging fruit outside of showing services that for others that are considering this they would want to look at?
I think everybody knows about the API, the Aligned API. We now will have a showings piece. Again, there's a lot under the hood. There's probably more under the hood than most of you realize. And again, that goes back to the nature of our organizations and the history of development and how we've approached services in our own marketplace. I think anybody that would be interested in learning what else is under the hood, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. And again, sure, we could do a press release for and itemize every service out there, but we don't do that. We're not those folks, right? We want to execute and come up with something and then share with the industry, this is what we're doing. If you want to be a part of it, come and have a conversation with us. We'd love for you to be partners with us as we go forward and really form the industry, what you want it to be, what we want it to be. Let's get past the talk. Let's get to the do. Let's execute.
I want to just say one thing too. Our mantra since the beginning, when we talked about our API, was every one of us knows our local market, right? We understand what we have. We built compliance departments. We have technology departments. We know what we do well. We don't want to change that. We want to enhance that, right? And so MLS Aligned is all about leaving local control in place. letting the MLSs do what they do best in their local market, serve those members and agents, right? And if we can provide tools, advice, product, whatever it is to enhance that experience, all we're doing is making MLSs better, right? Like Matt said it earlier, it's not about consolidation. It's about making the industry move forward in a better capacity. And that's what we're at the core, that's what we're about. And so it's about individualism of the MLSs collectively collaborating and bringing excellence to the future of this industry.
And the beauty of that, Clint, is that if we were a vendor, we'd be one step removed from the people who are actually using this, but we're not. We're touching our subscribers, our members every day. We know what they need, and we can make sure that this supports that now with scheduling and whatever other things we need to do in the future.
Matt, Kurt, any final words? Because we're right up against it, but go ahead.
I'm going to throw this one out there. We don't want to just be an MLS. We want MLS to be a verb. We want to be MLSing. And that's how we're approaching what we do.
Awesome. Kurt, as afraid as I am to give you the last word.
Perfect. Don't turn it over to me. Matt just wrapped it up for us. That was perfect.
Wrap. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Super appreciated the conversation, and good luck on your endeavors.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Go out, enjoy your day. Certainly appreciate your time. Take care.